не пройдут», — сжав руку в кулак, ответил испанский народ, принявший на себя первый удар фашизма. «Они не пройдут», — твердили антифашисты, которые со всего мира ехали на помощь борющейся Испании. Интербригады показывали примеры доблести и героизма на полях.
Greetings, diners, and welcome to another edition of the Collapse Cafe here on the Doomstead Diner. Today, I am happy to be talking with Russell Texas Bentley, who is currently fighting in the Ukraine and the Donetsk area, which is actually they're separatists and trying to break away from the Ukrainian government. And he hails from Texas, as his name might indicate, and went over there a little over a year ago to join their militia. Russell, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be on your show.
I'm glad to have you here. I ran into your material a few months ago. I think it was on the Greenville Post. It was the first place I saw it.
A great place, a great website, by the way.
Yes, I get a lot of material from Greenville Post as far as adding it to our news channel. Interesting, unique material, and one of the better websites that's out there, not mainstream media stuff. So I went exploring and eventually managed to turn up Russell's email address and sent him a note that I'd like to talk. And so here we are today. The first thing I think I want to talk about, Russell, because I know my audience is interested in this, is what got you over there and what your formative years were like here in the fascist states of America, growing up, and just what led you down the path to get there. Can you tell me a little bit about your parents and your family life, what their political leanings were, and so forth?
Sure. I was born in Austin, Texas. I grew up in Highland Park in Dallas, which is kind of like the Beverly Hills of Dallas. It's a very rich. It's where George Bush Jr. lives now. It's a very rich, exclusive area. A lot of millionaires and billionaires live there. It was a very insulated area. The people there, they're elitists. They're the one percenters for sure. Very prejudiced, racially prejudiced area. And when I was a little kid, we had a live-in maid. We had like our yard man that they were black, and they were really nice people, and I really liked them. And so when I heard everybody else, white people around, talking bad about black people and stuff, I'm like, hey man, you're talking about my friends. And so I felt like a cognitive dissonance about what people were saying and about what I knew from my own experiences. And that's something that has really made me different from a lot of people, is that I've learned from my own experiences rather than from what I heard on TV or what my friends think or what my parents told me or what I learned in school. I learned from my own life experiences. And as I grew up, during the Vietnam War, for example, I was reading the prison poems of Ho Chi Minh. I was reading Che Guevara. And it really made a lot of sense to me. So I've always had an alternative political outlook. And as life went on through the 70s and 80s, and life in the United States really started going downhill. And certainly after the year 2000, it was like it just fell off the cliff. And I saw these wars that the United States was starting all over the world that were really unjustified, that were really wars of aggression, which is a crime under the Nuremberg laws. And when Libya happened, even when Yugoslavia happened under Bill Clinton, that was a terrible crime. That was an unjustified war. Then Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, which was a terrible, terrible crime. Most people in America, they think Muammar Gaddafi was, some kind of clown. He dressed funny and gave long speeches at the UN. But Libya under Gaddafi had the highest standard of living of any country in Africa, higher than many countries in the West. In Libya under Gaddafi, medicine was free, housing was free, education, university education included, was free. Free. When people got married, the Libyan government gave him $50,000 wedding, the equivalent of $50,000 wedding present from the government. And so if Muammar Gaddafi was a crazy dictator, then I wish that I lived in a country that had a crazy dictator like that for a president, and I'm sure many Americans would like that too. Maidan happened. I saw that on TV, and I knew it was bogus. I knew it was engineered by the states from the get-go. John McCain was there, Victoria Nuland, whose real name is actually Victoria Noodleman, by the way. She was there, and I knew it was a phony revolution. And, it just got way out of hand. I could see that these guys throwing Molotovs at the cops. I mean, even from back then, if what the protesters in Maidan did in Kiev, if they did that in the States, the U.S. cops would mow them down. They would open fire and not stop till they ran out of bullets. And so the government that they were protesting against was at least more lenient than the U.S. government is now. And yet they were saying how bad it was. But then the government that they replaced it with, under the direction of the U.S. government, which Victoria Noodleman literally chose the people that were going to be in the government. It was not a democratically elected government, even to this day. It was directed by the U.S. government, who was going to be in command in Kiev. And so I knew that was funny. Then I saw the mass murders that happened in Odessa when the peaceful protesters were chased into the trade union building and then set on fire. Almost 100 people were murdered that day. The cops stood by or else helped to kill them. And, that really started making me ashamed to be an American. And then when it happened, there was in June of 2014, there was a air attack, a rocket attack from a Ukrainian Air Force jet on the city hall in Lugansk. And a woman named Ina Kukuruva was hit by those rockets, and her legs were basically completely blown off. And she was sitting on the ground, and she bled to death, but for about 1 minute after she got hit, she was still alive. And somebody took a video and some photographs. You can find them on the internet.
Yeah, I saw that.
And she's looking into the camera, and it was like she looked into my soul. And she said, "What are you going to do about this?" And I said, "I'm going to go there and kill the guys that did this." And that's exactly the moment when I had my decision completely to come here. And I started selling my stuff, saving my money. I did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, or one of those GoFundMe sites, and I raised the money. And right after Thanksgiving 2014, I got on a plane and flew to Rostov-on-Don, and then a couple of days later crossed the border into the Donetsk People's Republic, and I've been here ever since.
All right. Well, that was a concise and fairly, rapid and complete history of how you got from Texas over to Donetsk. And, I can definitely see a lot of those motivational factors along the way. I've certainly witnessed the same things since my youth, and with the Vietnam War and then Desert Storm, and just the endless series of wars that we have participated in. And then in the years since, I have done a lot of reading, and this is all nothing new. This is the way the government has been run, going back well to the 1800s. General Smedley Butler wrote War is a Racket back in
Yeah, Smedley Butler is a guy I admire very much.
Yeah. We have written numerous articles about Smedley on the diner. All right, but so we've got you over there, but I want to backtrack a little bit again. Find out a little bit about your working years here in the FS of A. What how did you start work? What sorts of work did you pursue?
Well, actually, my first job when I was 18, I lived in Brownsville, Texas, a very southern tip of Texas, right on the Mexican border. And work was hard to find in Brownsville when I got out of high school and started looking for a job. Didn't want to work at a Dairy Queen or something, so I ended up, my first job, I was actually a illegal immigrant worker from the United States into Mexico. I got my first job in Matamoros at a big factory over there as a welder, and I was actually an illegal, undocumented worker, but they paid me, and my take-home pay for 40 hours back then was $98 a week.
Yeah, the pay scales back in those years, and then crossing the border over to Mexico, can definitely bring you down. My very first job was a summer job as working in a shower curtain factory in New York City in the garment district before they moved all that stuff over to China. And, I was getting paid minimum wage and whatnot, $3 an hour at the time or something like that. So, okay, well, you started there, when you came back into the U.S.
Then a couple years later, I moved up to Houston, got a job as a tree surgeon. I've done that on and off throughout my life. It's pretty hard and dangerous work, but it pays pretty well, and I'm good at it. I eventually became a certified arborist. So I've done that off and on throughout my life. Joined the Army when I was 21, U.S. Army. Served 3 years over in 2 in Germany and 1 at Fort Polk. Then from there, my parents had opened a restaurant down on South Padre Island. I worked there for a while, about 7 years. Then I moved up to Minnesota, Minneapolis. Did more tree work up there, some political activist stuff. And then moved out to Washington in Washington State in 1999. Did some more tree trimming out there. They got big trees out on the West Coast up there, redwoods and western cedars and whatnot. So it was pretty good work. Then moved back to Austin in 2007. By then I became a certified arborist, and I was getting a little old to swing through the trees like Tarzan by that time. So I just decided to become a salesman and an estimator. And that was the job I was doing right before I came to Nova Russia. It was a good job. I was good at it. You know, if I worked 30 hours a week, I could bring home $1,000 in my pocket every week. If I worked 40 hours, I could bring home 1,500. So I was, I wasn't rich by any means, but I wasn't poor by any means either. I could eat all the steaks and drink all the whiskey I wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Living basically a fairly typical middle class life of that era.
Yeah.
Before things really went bluey. I know also, I've seen you playing your guitar on and singing on a few of your videos. So you're part of the music scene in Austin. We have one of our members' daughter is involved in the music scene in Austin, so they were very curious about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I played professionally for about 3 years when I lived down on South Padre back in the 80s. We had a band. We were the house band for a bar called Club Poco Loco, and we played around. We were pretty popular back then, and I've always enjoyed playing the guitar and writing songs and stuff like that. And actually, my niece Carson McCone is also a musician in Austin right now. She's doing pretty well. She's an up and coming singer songwriter, kind of country folk type music.
One of the things we were interested in, because I knew you had a niece that was involved in that, and like I said, my friend's daughter is also, and so I said maybe these people know each other, and whatnot.
I would bet that they do. I mean, the music scene in Austin is vibrant, but it's pretty tight. And Carson's got a pretty good name for herself down there, and she is pretty good.
So, well, we'll find out after we air this interview whether they know each other, and that would be very interesting indeed, if that's true. Okay, so that's how your years working. You mentioned that you joined the military, U.S. Army, when you were 21. You spent 3 years in there. What kind of job in the military did you have? And
12 Bravo combat engineer.
And that entailed
how it is in the U.S. Army. The lower the number and the closer to the beginning of the alphabet, the tougher the job and the closer to the front. And the numbers start at 10. So I was 12. 11B is infantry, 12B is combat engineer.
Okay, and as a combat engineer, what were your responsibilities?
Demolition, construction, mine clearing, mine laying, booby traps, stuff like that. Some of that training has proved to be very useful here in Nova Russia as well.
Yeah, that was my next question, and you anticipated it well. I'm wondering how much of that stuff you were able to transfer over to your latest adventure. So, okay, you decided to go to Nova Russia. That's a big decision, I think, obviously, for anybody to do. You're probably, I don't know if are there any other Americans who are over there that you know of?
Yes, there are several, but they, unlike me, they perhaps plan to go back someday, so they're very, very guarded about their identity or what they're doing here or something. So there are several of them, but I'd prefer not to say really too much about them.
I'm just curious if you were unique or if there are others, but there apparently are others. Even so, that decision and breaking it to your family and friends and workmates, how did that go when you let everybody know that you were headed off to foreign lands and probably wouldn't be coming back?
Well, my closest friends understood and supported my decision. My family, I think my brother understood and supported my decision, but other members of my family didn't really believe me. They thought I was just making some big talk. But I'm the kind of guy that usually does what he says he's going to do. And, at Thanksgiving, I said, I got the ticket. I'm leaving tomorrow.
How long was it between the time you let everybody know and then left? From when you first
About 3 or 4 months.
About 3 or 4
My
months.
original plan, I think I made the decision to come in like mid-June, something like that, 2014. My original plan was to leave at the end of August, but finances, Russian visa, stuff like that took a little longer, a little more complex than I expected, and so I ended up leaving at the end of November.
Now, when you got that visa, did you how did you write your visa application? Obviously, not going to write the visa application that you're going to fight in Novorossiysk. Did it as a tourist visa or what?
Yeah, I got a Russian tourist visa with two entries. So if I came here and it was like, a total madhouse or something, I could still get back to Russia and, get back to the States. But, it was my intention to come here and stay here. And my visa expired 1 month after I got here, my first day at the front, which was December 31st. And I have no regrets. I'm glad to be here. I actually like it here better than in the States. And my friends that I talk to back in the States are like, man, things are just getting worse and worse every year. We work harder, we make less money. I tell my Russian friends here, that if the cops see you driving down the street without your seatbelt on, they'll give you a ticket for $250, and they can't believe that. They're like, that's insane. And really it is. I mean,
well, it's the greater and greater control over your life that a bigger and bigger bureaucracy tends to get, and I think that this bureaucracy and this government has grown about as big and sent out as many tentacles as is humanly possible. So you had to raise the money to go there and have enough money to get going. What were your methods of getting enough money together to make the trip?
well, like I said, I had a pretty decently paying job. I kept up with that. I sold a lot of stuff, a lot of my major possessions because I really wasn't expecting or planning on coming back. And I also did a crowdfunding campaign on, I think it was GoFundMe.com, where you can. And what I said on that thing was that, I'm not going there to fight, I'm going there to help. And I've already bought my ticket. I've already got my way over there. This is money that I'm raising for emergency expenses or a ticket back if I really need one. And, so that was kind of a, middle of the road way of, letting people donate money without being worried that, the Department of Homeland Security was going to say they were funding terrorists or something like that. And I mean, and really it was true, but yeah, so I hit Donetsk. I had a little over $3,000 in my pocket when I got here, and that lasted me about 6 months.
So now you're basically living week to week, month to month on the wages that you're getting for working as an info warrior?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a lot of humanitarian work here, but I also have a lot of supporters that appreciate my information work, and they send money specifically for me and the unit that I work with, the information unit, Sud Vremeni, the essence of time. The money that they send to help continue our information work here, it goes to Sud Vremeni, the essence of time, and to me. And then the other stuff, I mean, when we do a humanitarian campaign, like we did one for this girl Sophie in Isnavata to help her get an operation for her legs. A buddy of mine, Electric, they got his leg blown off by a U.S.-made mine here at the front. We're raising money for him to get a prosthetic leg. When we do those kind of things, then we say, okay, this is the campaign, this is how much we need, and all the money that people send, they say, oh, this is for Electric or this is for Sophie, and all that 100% of that money that people stipulate for those humanitarian AIDS projects, it goes all to them. And then people send other money and they say, hey, this is for Tejas, this is for Sud Vremeni, this is for information work. Then Sud Vremeni and I, we split that money up. And I mean, my living expenses are very low, and this is something that's worth thinking about. I have a 2-bedroom apartment on the 7th floor, center city, like right downtown Donetsk. And Donetsk is a city of about 1 million people. It's a good-sized modern city, really nice city, actually. My rent and all utilities, including internet, it's a furnished apartment, 2-bedroom apartment. It runs me about 6,000 rubles a month.
Which would be how much in U.S. dollars at the current
about $80.
About $80 a month. Okay.
Yeah, for a furnished 2-bedroom apartment with all bills paid, and it's nice, man.
You're not going to find that anywhere in the FSFA, that's for sure.
maybe in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, maybe in Flint. And
But you know, and here's
you
the
can
thing,
drink the
bro.
leaded water.
I mean, this is worth thinking about. Bottle a half liter of Stolichnaya vodka,
Mm,
buck and a half. Pack of Winston cigarettes, 70 cents. I
yeah,
mean,
I'm paying.
fast internet here, fast internet, $10 a month.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm
So
paying $10 a pack for my cigarettes, and
yeah, sure.
my internet's costing me something like 100 a month or whatever.
Well, see, and that's the whole point, man. That I mean, the companies that provide these products and services here, they're still able to make a profit. It's just not a raping rip-off profit like it is in the United States, you know?
Yeah, the economics are definitely a whole lot different between the two
Yeah,
places. The
and
way
it's
it's
and
run
it's because
from the
it's
ground up.
because the governments are different, man. The government in the United States is it works for the corporations, man. Their job in the United States is to make it easier for the corporations and the government itself to squeeze every dime out of the regular working people of the United States. And so they don't put a limit on how much people can charge and stuff, and that's a lot of people in America, they think it's bad when I say that I'm a communist, but I am a communist. And I'll tell you what that means to me. This is worth thinking about. Communism, it doesn't mean that the garbage man and the brain surgeon both get paid $100 a month. I mean, there can be different degrees of pay for different jobs, but it means that there's a certain level in a civilized society below which members of that society cannot live and still call that society civilized. I mean, when people sleep under bridges, when people eat out of garbage cans, when people die because they can't afford medicine, that's not a civilized society. So there's a certain level below which people in a civilized society should not live. They should have access to housing. They should have access to medicine, education, stuff like that. And the way that you guarantee that everybody has access to that, whether they can work or not, is because you say, okay, there's a certain level above which people cannot have more money. 10 million bucks, no problem. 20 million bucks, no problem. 50 million bucks, you have to work pretty hard to earn 50 million bucks. $1 billion, which is 1,000 million bucks, no one can earn $1 billion. There's no way that you can earn. No, every billionaire on this planet is a thief because they took the surplus profit that was made by people that worked for them and they kept it for themselves when the people that did the work were the ones who earned it. So no one can earn $1 billion. No one can work that hard. I mean, when I was a tree trimmer, when I was climbing up 150-foot tall trees, I made about 50,000 bucks a year. That's hard, dangerous work, and it takes a lot of skill, and it takes a lot of balls to do it too. And I did it well. And 50,000 bucks is a comfortable living. So you're talking about 2,000 times that. Are you kidding, man? Who can work 2,000 times harder than I did at that kind of a job? I mean, it's like the second most dangerous job that there is, by the way, too. There's no excuse for billionaires. And so there has to be a limit on how rich people can be. And you take that surplus money and you create a limit on how poor people can be. And you say, just because this guy's a junkie, just because this guy's semi-retarded, just because this guy's just a lazy punk doesn't mean that he deserves to sleep in the street. In a civilized society, everybody has a house. Everybody has enough to eat. If everybody wants to work, they can get a job. If everybody wants to go to school, they can go to school without becoming $100,000 in debt. And that's the kind of government that we have here. Let me tell you something, bro, and this is pretty interesting. In my apartment building, if people don't pay their electric bill, they put up a piece of paper at the entrance hall. And it says, apartment 57 owes 300 rubles. Apartment 75 owes 100 rubles. They don't turn the electricity off. If somebody can't pay, they just say, hey, don't forget to pay. And plus we're telling all your neighbors that. I mean, the thing is, the electricity here it's like $15 a month for electricity here. In Texas, it was 150, $200 a month, maybe 300 in the winter. I mean, in the summer, if you ran the air conditioning.
That's one of the things, though, for me, that is still fairly reasonable up here because of the price of natural gas. Thing is run on NG up here. So my monthly electric bill is usually about $25. So it's not too bad. That's one of the few things.
Well, Alaska's got it a lot better than a lot of places down in the lower 48, man, for sure, man. I've been there enough to know, man.
Yeah, it's a co-op, the Matanuska Electric Association, so it's not really a direct for-profit type of corporation.
Yeah.
It was formed actually during the Great Depression when Roosevelt was setting up a lot of these things, and they were set up along a socialist type of model. All right, so we've gotten a little bit of the background, and now you're over in Donetsk. You've made it across the border. You got to join the militia. What about how did you train for it for going out to the front? What sort of training did you get? You had a language barrier too. How did you get over the language barrier?
And that language barrier was really tough. And what I've said since I've been here, people that have written to me and said, "Hey, I want to come join the militia," or come help out. The most important thing, if you want to come here, is to know Russian, to learn Russian before you get here. Because I didn't know it. And as far as the training went, from the time I signed up, the 14th of December is when I joined the Nova Russian Army. I had 2 weeks of basic training. The first week was like showing how to take down a Kalashnikov, which I already knew. Basically doing push-ups and, running in the morning. And then after that, the second week was we were manning a checkpoint about 2 kilometers from the UCROP lines. There was another checkpoint when we were there in December. 2 guys, the next rotation came to that checkpoint, and the guys that were there were both with their throats cut and their weapons gone from the UCROPs. So it was pretty much on-the-job training. And after 2 weeks at basic in Iznovata, I went to the airport. And at the airport in December and January last year, it was very, very hard fighting. Every single day there were firefights with thousands, literally multi-thousands of rounds shot by each side, every day.
Where was your ammo coming from?
We got ammo delivered to us every morning from right before dawn. A car would come from the center of Donetsk. They would bring food, water, and ammo, and new soldiers. And we had to run across about 100 meters of open land that was under sniper fire, under artillery observation. We shot so much ammo at my first position, Troishka, at the airport, that we used the wood from the ammo crates in our stoves, which was the only thing we had for heat, to heat our rooms and to cook our meals.
Ooh, well, it definitely was a trial by fire, as they say.
It very much was.
How long were you at the airport? How long did the firefighting go on?
I was at the airport for about 3 months, and then I moved to another little town a few miles away called Spartak, which is also a very, very hot position. At the airport, I was at Troishka in January for a couple of weeks, and then I went to Milnitsia, which was a communication center, and then I went to Ushi, which was an observation and listening post that was under very, very heavy artillery fire. In January, we took back the new terminal of the airport. We drove the Ukrainian army back a couple of kilometers. We destroyed the control tower. We took the new terminal. And after that, it wasn't so much firefights with guns. It was artillery attacks because the UCROPs were pushed back several kilometers. So they just shot at us with artillery. They had a huge advantage in artillery against us. At the Ushi position, in a 3-hour tour of guard duty, we would get shot at probably between 20 and 50 rounds directly, targeting our position. And they knew exactly which room of which house we were in.
What about weapons disparity? You mentioned that they had more in the way of artillery. What about things like tanks, air support, drones, that sort of business?
Well, they don't fly their aircraft anymore against us. They have not since shortly after they shot down MH17, which the Ukrainian Air Force shot down that plane, by the way, that civilian Dutch or Malaysian airliner that flew from Amsterdam. The evidence is overwhelming. Anybody that looks at it is either a fool or a liar if they question who shot that down. And shortly after that, the Ukrainian Air Force quit flying planes against Nova Russia. They do use drones quite frequently. I've seen them many times. I've shot at them many times. We've shot some of them down. They have a lot better. I mean, the United States has given hundreds of millions of dollars of military aid to the Ukrainian army, lethal and non-lethal. And among the non-lethal items that they give are drones. They give thermal imagers, which are a force multiplier. Very, very, I mean, you can't kill anyone with the thermal imager, but if you put one on a rifle, it makes that rifle 20 times more effective, especially at night. And we have thermal imagers too. They're not of the quality or nearly of the quantity that the UCROPs have. Basically, we have anti-tank weapons. We have, rifles and grenades equivalent of them. The UCROPs have many more military, armored vehicles than we have. But we have plenty of anti-armor weapons. The Ukrainian army outnumbers us about 10 to 1 right now on the front. 10 to 1. But they are scared to attack us. And if they do attack us, if there is the big UCROP offensive when it comes, the Ukrainian army will be destroyed here. Destroyed here. Now, it will cost a lot of good guys' lives, but we will destroy the Ukrainian army if they attack Donbass.
Now, that aspect of if and when they attack, we talked about the airport time, and that was a lot of live fire going on. At least from the news reports and reading on this end, it appears that there's less actual firefighting going on now, more political machinations and whatnot. What's the level of fighting that's happening at the moment?
At the front, between the Ukrainian army and the Novorussian army, it's still very, very hot. I mean, there are firefights all along the front every day still. The thing that's been reduced somewhat for the last few months, although it's starting to pick up again, is the Ukrainian artillery attacks against civilian areas. But in the last couple of weeks, they've started to do that again. And especially, Gorlovka, Spartak, here in Donetsk. In the last week or so, we've been hearing artillery heavy bombardments pretty much every day. And civilians are again getting killed.
Yeah, I did see on your website, or maybe it was Essence of Time's website, YouTube channel, the memorial to the people who were killed last year in a bus or in a trolley.
Yeah,
something like that.
It was a basically like a cable car trolley bus through totally civilian area. There was no military around it. It was the day after we took the airport, and it was kind of their revenge. They were shelling the civilian area. Bus took a direct hit from a 120 millimeter mortar, which is a heavy artillery. It killed 20 people, or killed 13 people and wounded 20 more. And I mean, it doesn't mean like a scratch. It means like blinded or blew their arms or legs off or something like that, So that was, one hit that did huge damage. It really affected everybody in the city. When we went to the memorial, that was 1 year later, there was probably 400 people there that day, including Zaharchenko, the leader of the DNR.
Well, that is definitely a tragedy, and fortunately...
Well, more than a tragedy, it was actually it was a war crime. That was an intentional targeting of civilian areas. It's an act of terrorism. That's exactly what it is. The Ukrainian army, Ukrainian military, they are terrorists, and the United States backs them. So the United States government is literally and absolutely a state sponsor of terrorism.
Yeah, I think you can pretty much say that's true on many fronts, and not just in Donetsk.
Indeed.
It goes to Syria and many other places as well, and all the attempts at regime change.
And speaking of which, in Syria, the ISIS cannibals that are being smashed right now by the Russian offensive against them, Russian and Syrian army, the United States is moving those terrorists out of Syria, and we have irrefutable, certain, concrete evidence that Syrian terrorists from ISIS have been shipped to Odessa and are being moved from Odessa to the Mariupol area, which is one of our frontline positions. Our recon units that go behind the Ukrainian lines have surveilled Ukrainian army bases and seen ISIS flags. Have photos of ISIS flags.
Well, that is definitely information that is worth getting out, and especially if we can get pictures and so forth at some point, I would be certainly happy to publish them.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I got a real funny feeling talking to you on the phone.